Education is vital to the future of Singapore, to creating hope for a better tomorrow. And hope is essential to our future and to the Singapore story. But besides hope, Singapore tomorrow must also have a bigger heart. Care and compassion for the needy and elderly, but also a largeness of spirit, a generosity, a magnanimity to those who are around us. It reflects the sort of people we are and the values which we hold dear. We've, for a long time, recognized the importance of taking care of the less fortunate members of society. We've worked hard to build an inclusive society and enabled everyone to enjoy the fruits of progress, especially the weak and the elderly and the disabled, through housing, through education, through health care, heavily subsidized and widely available. But especially and most fundamentally, through growth, prosperity, which has created jobs and improved lives for all. Over the last decades, new needs have emerged. Society has become stretched out, somewhat stratified. We get pressure of globalization. So we've addressed these new social needs with new programs: workfare, comcare, additional housing grants, special housing grants. So many schemes, so many ways to help. But the objective is targeted to uplift Singaporeans who need help. And in this year's budget, we made a major shift with an inclusive budget, with significant initiatives for the elderly, like the silver housing bonus, for the low and middle income, like the GST vouchers, for the disabled, like daycare activity centers. We're not just spending more, but we're setting a new strategic direction for Singapore and laying the basis for stronger social safety nets, which will stand the test of the next couple of decades. Because we are striking a new balance in our social compact. What you must do as individuals, as families, and what the state will help you to do so that we can advance together. And what we've started in the budget, we will build on in the years to come. But I would like, as always, to have a caution, have a care. 3 cautions. First, inclusiveness doesn't just mean more good things from the state or falling from heaven. All benefits have to be paid for. People say you're rich, you have reserves. We are already relying on reserves, spending part of the returns from investing these reserves. It's what Ministry of Finance calls NIRC, Net Investment Returns Contributions. It's an item in the budget. When you invest the money, every year it grows. You take a bit of that growth, or half of that growth, and we use it for our spending. And it's helped us fund many new programs and still balance our budget without having to push up taxes sharply. So last year, to FY 2011, from reserves, we got $8 billion to spend. We got more money from the reserves to spend than we got by collecting personal income taxes. And I think it's 4 times as much as we got from COEs. So it's not a small amount of money. It's 1/7 of our expenditures every year comes from our reserves. So we are already drawing on this. So if the reserves grow, you may get more. If the reserves don't, well, we will have to live with less. But we have to draw from the reserves in a sustainable way, so that it stays there and you can continue to have money there year after year. We can't just spend everything on ourselves. We have a responsibility to the future, to the next generation. And we have to husband these reserves so that the next generation won't say, my grandparents, they spent it all. If you look ahead, the state is bound to spend more on social services. We are aging. Medical science is progressing. Every year, the demands will increase, and these demands will have to be partially met from the state. So social spending will go up. In many countries, the politicians champion social spending, but they pretend that it doesn't cost the taxpayers anything. Even in Singapore, sometimes people tell you, it doesn't matter, that's just a social investment. Since it's an investment, it'll look after itself. But let me tell you the truth. As our social spending increases significantly, sooner or later, our taxes must go up. Not immediately, but if you're talking about 20 years, certainly within that 20 years, whoever is the government will at some point have to raise taxes, because the spending will have to be done, and the spending will have to be paid for. And I hope that the government of the day will have the gumption to do that, and the population of the day will have the good sense to support that. So that's the first caveat. Nothing falls from heaven. The second message is social safety nets have to be coupled with self-reliance and resilience. We have to want to do the best for ourselves. People have to be motivated to make the effort, to strive, not just to queue up and get something from the state. The state will help you where it can, but it cannot replace what you and your family can do for yourselves and for each other. To survive, we have to be resilient, tough as individuals, close as families, cohesive as a society, strong as a nation. And we have to be prepared to compete and to hold our own. The competition is there. There is no place to hide. The government can help to enable you to meet the competition. It's not possible for us to say, we'll keep the competition away, the big bad wolf is outside, we are quite safe at home, nothing to worry about. Competition is there, we have to be tough enough. Sometimes something will go wrong, and when we encounter setbacks, we must have the spunk to pick ourselves up, dust off whatever stuck to us, and press on. The third caveat I have is we must maintain a sense of mutual responsibility amongst ourselves, and especially on the part of those who are more successful than others. You've succeeded working hard through your own efforts, yes, but you've also benefited from the system, which nurtured you, and from the many others who helped you to do well. President Obama in America said this recently. He got flamed because it got politicized. He says, Obama said, if you succeed, it's not because of yourself. But this is exactly what he meant. You may be a great entrepreneur, you may be a very successful banker, you may have invented something, but there were schools, there were parents, there were teachers, there's a society, there's a system which enabled you to do well. Without that, you would have been nothing. And I think that our successful people have to know that, and also have to feel that obligation, that it's right that having done well, they make the effort and help others too. And one way to do this is by starting a social enterprise. One lady who started something is Josephine Ng, who started a social enterprise called Alteration Initiative. Josephine used to run a marketing agency, did well, but then she decided she wanted to do something more, sold it, and to give back to society. So she founded Alteration Initiative. And what it does is to provide professional alteration services. And the employees are women in need, so she trains them as seamstresses, she gives them decent salaries, and Alteration Initiative not just alters clothes, but transforms the employees' lives as well. Besides social welfare, another aspect of having a big heart is very important. And that is knowing how to treat one another on this little island of ours. We've built a harmonious society by being big-hearted. We treat our fellow citizens with respect. We accommodate the practices and the beliefs and the customs of different races and religions. We share our void decks for Malay weddings, Chinese funerals, other ceremonies. There's a spirit of give and take, mutual accommodation. We're all in this same country together. And indeed, I think most Singaporeans are generous by nature. You read many heartwarming stories and thank you letters in the Straits Times forum. Taxi driver returns a handbag left in his taxi. Old lady fell down. Stranger came, picked her up, helped her cross the road, go home. These are all ways which we ought to be behaving and acting. More people are donating to charitable causes. Young people particularly are passionate over causes beyond themselves. I met a bunch of youth leaders recently over tea, and I was very cheered by the experience, just as you heard Lawrence Wong talk about it earlier. Because they were engaged, they were positive, they were doing something about it, not just talking about it, and they could see how their efforts were making society better. One of them was Tok King Ling. She's a youth volunteer, and she leads overseas youth expeditions. She topped her class in Nanyang Poly. Now she's pursuing a social work degree in NUS. And I think she will make an outstanding social worker because the passion is there. Farhan Firdaus, another active youth volunteer, he founded Voluntarius, which is an organization which brings youths together to do good work. For example, cycling to raise money for disadvantaged kids. And there are many more stories like that. But I would be less than honest if I didn't tell you that there are also some troubling signs which we can all see. Residents reserving public roads outside their houses to park their own cars. They don't use tissue paper. They use dustbins, they use flower pots, and then they use the dustbins and flower pots to fight one another once in a while. HDB neighbors on the same corridor quarreling over the washing of the corridor. One wants it clean, the other one wants it dry. No end of arguments. Placing of potted plants. Arguments over noise. One says he's practicing his singing, the other one says you're disturbing my child's examination preparations. It becomes a feud. The RCs have a big headache because they are friends with both, but they cannot make the problem go away. People objecting to nursing homes and studio apartments in their own place, but please put it just across the road so it's not too far away. These are not new things. It's still only a minority, but we seem to be getting less patient, less tolerant, less willing to compromise in order to get along. Maybe it's because we are losing the kampong spirit. We talk about the kampong spirit. We think back to the picture just now which I showed in my Chinese speech of how the kampong was. All the kids, big and small, gathered around the well. So you're not just collecting water or washing clothes or bathing, but you're interacting with one another and therefore getting along with one another. When we move into HDB flats, some of that remain. You had the common corridors. People leave the doors open, talk to one another. There are common spaces. You may wait for the lift, and in the old days you wait quite long for the lift because one lift on 3 floors. No LUP yet. So, one way or another, you interact with your neighbors and you become friends, and so there's give and take. But today, we lead more private lives. The corridors are, many of them, not common corridors. 3, 4 flats share one lift landing. LUP, now you don't have to go downstairs and meet people from 3 levels. Just people on your floor. Work takes more time. There are fewer opportunities to bump into neighbors. Unconsciously, less interaction results in less consideration. maybe more self-centered behavior. And maybe that explains why there's a rising trend of not so good behavior. But we shouldn't let this spread and make us into ugly Singaporeans. I think we'll be ashamed of ourselves.